that as the Minister of Planning and Development, it's really quite a pleasure to attend this and have an opportunity to see what we plan for next year. I am, I'm happy for the words for Dr. James Armstrong, the National Planning Authority. Two of the things that I've been able to do since becoming the Minister of Planning is to establish a National Planning Authority, as well as to set up the Council of Urban Planners, which is something that has been in the making for a very long time. To setting up those two institutions that I think will make a big difference for the architects in Trinidad and Tobago. Just to share my own experience, just recently, as a member of Parliament, going into a community, some of you may be familiar with Honourable. LSA is doing some work there, and there were so many complaints, so I decided to take a visit. And you can well imagine what happens in unplanned communities. So the things that you have to do as a member of Parliament, where somebody blocks a drain, and of course nobody really owns the land there, but everybody owns the land. That's a sort of a contradiction. So you have to go and, that was an area where there was lead, and as a former Minister of the Environment, I got EMA to remove most of it. And in my second incarnation as Minister of the Environment, to remove the balance. But, they literally build in swamps, build in the path of the river. It's not a very easy exercise. But I'm really fascinated always by architecture. I'm so happy to learn on the two books. One of the things I do is to go, when I go to Barnes and Nobles, and you have all these, almost a floor on architecture, so I'm really hoping, I'm listening to what Mr. Hayward provided us with this afternoon, and I'm so happy that we have that history and it's going to be on the website, and the fact that we can actually have books that speak about architecture and speak about the uniqueness of Trinidad's own culture and heritage. US Embassy gave a grant to the National Trust to look at resilience in terms of our heritage. So Nelson Island is one, and the PTSD building is another. So you find that there are different ways that we can look at our culture and our own uniqueness in Trinidad and Tobago, and of course the influence historically of the French and the British, and the Spanish, and how we have been able to blend that in terms of our own development. So I know there have been concerns. I'm responsible for the public sector investment program, and I was just talking to a couple of the architects about how there is a linkage between, your planning, your design, and the challenges you face with the completion of buildings, and how could we ensure that there is an education so people understand sometimes why things take so long and why we don't do much better than we should do in terms of implementation, and that could be really a very, very serious challenge for some of us. But I'm really happy to be here. It's an education for me as somebody that's responsible for planning, responsible for the environment, responsible for the public sector investment program. So we all look forward to really ultimately a better standard of living, a better Trinidad and Tobago. One of the things that I've always been conscious of is climate change, natural disasters, and what happens when we don't have building codes. And now we panic a lot more every time we think of flooding. As someone that has responsibility for a large part of the rural Trinidad and Tobago, which is in North Coast, Banshee Shares, Manlacqua, Paria, you're always fascinated about places that people build, and the fact that some of those houses built on some stilts have been there for 100 years. And we think about talking about designs, and we ask ourselves what it is they did those years ago, still built of wood, that they have been able to withstand the hurricanes, that come our way. So, history and culture is as equally important as the advancement of planning and technology. one of the things that we have done in the Ministry of Planning and Development is to have the developed TT that has worked very well. But we also understand that there is a linkage, as Dr. Armstrong said, that whole interdiscipline, that you can get your approval from town and country, and then you have to go to the Ministry of Health, you have to go to the Ministry of Local Government, and you have to go to WASA. So how do we ensure that your lives are made easier and things are not done in silos? So it's not really just sufficient for us to have succeeded in that sense, it's how we can impact on others so that at the end of the day, it's really that it's the product that you're talking about, and there's so many different persons that are relevant for that product. So the final thing I want to share with you is that in Arima we have developed a smart city, and that concept really is to look at applying, for example, for your health permit and other things, and how can you do that? How can you use that platform much easier? And that is something that I wanted to share with you as a concept that can revolutionize and change things. So as we reform local government, how can you use artificial intelligence, and how can you use technology? How can we be innovative as architects so that the lives of the citizens and the people that you save can be much easier. So let me just wish you well. I can't really play golf, but I'm always willing to learn. So congratulations on your 2025 and having a plan as architects. Have a good night.